Alive on the Moon, Jaro, it's on the pen alive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Claptrack, and happy Thursday night. Welcome to On the Pen Live, the 81st episode of On the Pen Live. I am your host, Dave Knapp, ManOnMounjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Compound, that pen. That's what we talk about here at On the Pen. And I can't believe we're 81 episodes deep. And I also can't believe that it's like pushing the middle of September. What a fast year this has been. What a whirlwind it has been. Thank you for being along on the journey with me. We have got a great show for you tonight with some exciting channel announcements, some exciting news about new medications that are in the pipeline, just astounding news. We're going to share it all. This is a special edition of On the Pen Live because as you're watching it tonight, I will be coaching my boys' football team. So this is the only sort of overlap in schedule this year. So we'll be back to truly live shows next week. We've got a great slate of guests coming up. We've got a great guest on tonight. Excited to make a special channel announcement. But because we're going to do somewhat of an abbreviated show tonight, I am super excited to bring you some news tonight. So this is going to be very focused on the news that we've got from Novo Nordisk this week about amycretin. And it is what's fresh this week. Amycretin. So if you have not heard of this one, it is a amylin agonist combined with a GLP-1 agonist or an incretin agonist, presumably GLP-1. And it's combined into one molecule into a oral formulation. And this is a absolutely game-changing pipeline medication from Novo Nordisk. And we got some really fascinating information this week about it that I'm going to share with you. So this is top-line data from a phase 1 trial in amycretin. And over a 12-week period, this is just astounding. Over a 12-week period, participants on the highest dose, which was 50 milligrams twice daily, lost 13% of their body weight. That is an astounding number. On pace, if the weight loss continues at that dose, to surpass the weight loss of retatrutide and cagrilintide in a pill. Just let that sink in, a pill formulation. To think about the implications for manufacturing capacity. Think about the implications for not having to worry about pens. And if you're somebody like me who just constantly thinks that about the hundreds of thousands of people that are getting on these medications weekly, in addition to the millions that are already on them, think about how many of these are in landfills right now. Just a staggering number of these pens are in landfills. Thankfully, Novo Nordisk actually has a recycling program over in Europe for their Ozempic pens. So they do something, but the vast majority of these pens will end up in landfills as plastic waste. And it is very exciting to think about pill formulations that would be much better for the environment, much better for patients that are looking for a non-injectable version of these drugs. Think about the fact that you would eliminate cold storage in the supply chain. It's just the implications are huge for amycretin. And so the main questions that people have had about these over the last couple of days, I want to fly over before we get to the channel announcements and our special guests tonight. So the first question I get is, what about the safety profile? What about the side effects? The side effects with this medication so far, and of course, they titrate up fast, and we've learned a little bit from other drug manufacturers like Roche this week. Really fast titration process in the phase 1 trials, just kind of cranking the doses up to see what they can do. Of course, when you do that, you get a little bit more intense side effects because you're titrating faster than you may have to do in the real world. But it seems like, by and large, the side effect profile for amycretin is right on pace with other GLP-1 or incretin mimetic drugs. Now, of course, Some of the interesting things about amycretin is that it combines, like we said, GLP-1 and amylin. And people's questions are going right to, because they're informed, because they watch OnThePen, CagriSema, which is the next drug to hit the market from Novo Nordisk, which is amylin and GLP-1, semaglutide and cagrilintide. They say, well, what's the difference between this other than the fact that this is a pill? Well, CagriSema is actually two separate molecules. In fact, the pen, the delivery mechanism for CagriSema, is a dual chamber, meaning so in the Wegovy pen, you can kind of see the chamber there. You can see the same thing in the Ozempic pen. That's the chamber there. In the CagriSema pen, it's two chambers that feed down into one needle, because cagrilintide has different needs, right, in how it can be stored and maintain the proper pH levels to maintain safety and efficacy of that peptide, versus semaglutide, which has its own requirements. So they haven't been able to combine those molecules yet. With amycretin, they've actually combined the dual mechanism into one molecule. And so that is the big difference. We're not necessarily talking about semaglutide here, or even cagrilintide. We're talking about a single molecule drug here. So amycretin is holding a lot of promise. The second thing is, the question I have is it a peptide or is it a small molecule? We know that orforglipron, which is coming from Eli Lilly here in 2026, is a small molecule drug, non-peptide. The amycretin one takes advantage, and thanks to Cloakster for pointing this out to me, it takes advantage of this SNAC technology, SNAC technology, which is proprietary to Novo Nordisk, which is basically a technology that for all intents and purposes is applied to the oral formulations of semaglutide, Rybelsus, to increase the bioavailability and the absorption as the peptide travels through the gut, so that it doesn't get broken down and that there's more of the API available for absorption in the body. And because it's utilizing that SNAC technology and needs that SNAC technology to improve the absorption, my sense is this is also a peptide medication, which would be an interesting thing to consider when we talk about scaling the drug, because we know that even high-dose Rybelsus has been sort of withheld from coming to market because Novo Nordisk cannot manufacture enough API. Of course, Novo Nordisk, like Eli Lilly, is investing tons and tons of dollars into not only manufacturing, but into building their own manufacturing capacity and acquiring other. In fact, on the Eli Lilly side, just this week, we saw that they are actually investing another $2 billion in manufacturing capacity in Ireland, which is absolutely astounding. That brings their total investment in manufacturing capacity for Eli Lilly up to $20 billion since 2020. $20 billion in expanding manufacturing capacity gives you a little bit of an idea about what they expect to get as a return on investment in that manufacturing capacity. Those are astounding numbers. Of course, Novo Nordisk has not announced quite that much investment in manufacturing capacity, but they have a $16 billion deal on the table to acquire Catalent by the end of this year, which, as we know, Catalent is a pharmaceutical juggernaut. They subcontract with many of the companies out there that are manufacturing injectable medications for the finish and fill process. This would require multiple plants from Catalent. So they're more on the acquisition side, where Eli Lilly is actually building out their own capacity. But just a really fascinating topic of conversation to think about. How are they going to keep up with demand? There's 190 million people in the United States living with obesity that could potentially benefit from anti-obesity drugs. And of course, the problem worldwide is around 1 billion people. And so that is too big of a market for two companies to serve. That's why we were excited to bring you news out of the European Diabetes get together they had. I can't remember what the name is. There's a big acronym for it. But they had their answer to the American Diabetes Association over in Europe. And we learned a lot from a lot of the pipeline medications. If you caught this week's podcast on the Pen, the Weekly Dose, that's what it was all about. But this is the news on amycretin. People's next question typically, like, when are we going to see it? When is this actually going to hit the market? 28, 29 is probably around the time that we would expect to see this come to market. We have heard rumblings that Novo Nordisk may plan to skip phase 2 trials. for amycretin, go right to phase 3. Now you might be like, how can they do that? Well, phase 1 trials are basically designed to just prove that the drug is safe, that it can be tolerated by human beings. The phase 2 trials are really more of a hedge, more of a exploratory phase for the pharmaceutical companies to decide whether they want to scale out to phase 3. So where you've got maybe a couple hundred people in a phase 2 trial, even less than that sometimes, but just a small number of participants in a phase 2 trial. You're talking about thousands in a phase 3 trial. So when you're talking about the cost of running a phase 3 trial, and the phase 3 trials last a lot longer as well. And so usually it's if a drug company believes in the safety, the efficacy, and they feel like they have the titration process and the dosing figured out, then they could advance to a phase 3 trial first, which means that they could get a phase 3 trial going as early as 2025 potentially. But then you would expect that trial to last at least a couple of years before it would hit the FDA for approval and then ultimately be brought to market about 6 months thereafter. So we're looking about 28, 29. But when you talk about the potential of this drug to completely transform obesity medicine, this is a drug that we will have more than likely retatrutide and CagriSema level results in a pill, and it'll be coming along just a couple of years behind those others. So that is this week's What's Fresh amycretin. Very, very exciting one to watch. We will continue to stay on top of this at OnThePen. Of course, you know that we will always do that. That brings me to tonight's special channel news. So we've been working on something for a little bit here in order to bring you sort of some more special sort of correspondent type content here for OnThePen Live every week. And if you remember back to this spring, we had a guest who was on the show. Her name is Korrie, and Korrie is a content creator over on TikTok. We had a wonderful conversation about her journey to GLP-1 medications, which was a very unique story. Unlike many other stories that we have heard about people's sort of journeys to GLP-1 medications, she had a really unique story. And Korrie is in maintenance now. And one of the things that caught my attention over the last few weeks was a live that Korrie was doing in the community over on TikTok. And basically just sort of getting together members of the community who had reached the maintenance stage of their journey with GLP-1s or their weight loss journey, and really they've gotten together in this sort of community format that Korrie has organized, and really just started to share with one another what are the things that are working, what are maybe some of the things that you didn't expect that have come up. I'm going to let her tell the story a little bit more because she'll be able to tell it better than I. But as you know, we've been doing OnThePen Live, as we said at the beginning of the show, for now 81 episodes. We are knocking on the door of 2 years ago when we started this channel. And many, many of you are in maintenance. And of course, we brought you some segments along the way about maintenance. We've had our friend Michelle, who has shared a bit about her maintenance journey. She's still contributing to the show in really meaningful ways and is extremely helpful to me. But I would like Korrie to come on and tell a little bit more about her story, about how she's kind of got the community together, because I think she's going to be able to bring some really interesting perspective to OnThePen. So without further ado, tonight's hot channel, Korrie, will join us to talk about her community lives and what we're going to be doing here at OnThePen.
Hot channel.
Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. How's the Florida weather today?
Oh, it's because of the hurricane in the Gulf. We keep getting waves of it where you get a rainstorm and then it's bright and sunny again. And then so that's very typical though.
I was going to say, isn't that kind of how Florida always is?
Yeah. I mean, the aspects where you're not affected by the hurricane, you kind of enjoy the bands a little bit because it's a little, relax a little bit during the band and then it's bright and sunny again. So
very good. So that stuff is all pretty well to the west of you though, right?
Yeah.
You're just getting kind of that spin-off.
Yeah. We always worry about when they come, but hopefully they're safe over where they're at.
Yeah. Well, definitely thoughts and prayers to anyone who's watching who may be in the path of that storm. I know, like, I have family that lives on the East Coast, and it can be a very, very tense time because there's always this lead up of, is it going to come towards us? Is it not? Is it going to be a category this or a category that? It seems like, to live down there, you're living with a good amount of anxiety just around hurricane season. Sure.
Well, I was born and raised in Central Florida, so it never affected us, and we never worried about it at all. And then we purchased a house in Southwest Florida a few years ago, and our house got pummeled because of the tornadoes, and picked up houses and threw them into our house. So now we actually worry. So when you're on the coast, you definitely worry a lot more. When you're inland, it's not. But things have changed a little bit. There's been a lot more flooding, so I feel like it's changed recently. So maybe it's just experience, and you're like, now you're frightened and you never were before. So
yeah. It's a different animal when you're on the coast for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Korrie, do you want to remind everybody, just do a quick flyover of your journey to GLP-1s for those who maybe missed the live from earlier this spring when you were on? Just a quick flyover of how you ended up on tirzepatide, the health conditions that you kind of struggled with. We don't have to belabor it because people can always go back and watch the whole story there. But I just kind of like to give people that perspective before we jump into the next part.
Sure. Yeah. I think mine more or less, I would say, is high cortisol levels with stress over the course of my life, with severe things that happened. And I know that cortisol does affect insulin. And so I was diagnosed with insulin resistance, but I still always just blamed myself. I was just didn't have enough willpower to make all of this happen. And so back, it was last summer, I had tried semaglutide back in 2021, and I did not succeed with that. I could not handle it very well. And but I didn't know what I was doing back then. I also think that it's just different. It's just different for everybody. And so for me, it didn't work out very well. And so I found out about tirzepatide last August of 2023, and this is before Zepbound was available. And so I found it locally at the local IV place that I was at, and I was their first client that had ever ordered it and gotten it, and they erroneously put in something called BP 157 in it, which was banned by the time in the middle of while I was taking it.
They combined BP 157 with tirzepatide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's because the guy who was running it there, he was a former bodybuilder, and I know that it's supposed to be something that helps with
like a recovery, right?
Yeah, something like so you don't lose muscle and whatnot. But the combination of that, I was pretty sick on it. And so, but
it's
I still
interesting. Can I interject for just a second? Because I think that has always been sort of an interesting thing on the topic of compounds. And I think why, like last week we had Dr. Spencer Nadolsky on, who was maybe one of the early, like sort of, I don't want to say he was ever really, like he was definitely skeptical about compounds. Dr. Michael Albert, who's been on this show before, same thing. So a lot of the doctors were really skeptical. I think the reason why is because when this stuff first came out, that was what true compounding was. That's how they thought they could sort of get around, the patents, is just mix it with something else. But BP 157 and tirzepatide were never tested together. There's no way to know if those things interact. And it sounds like your experience was not that pleasant.
No. And I mean, I had complete medical ignorance on that. And I didn't even know that they put it in. I didn't even know until I looked at the label, maybe a month in, because I was just like, okay, I wasn't doing it at home. I went there and they injected it. And so finally I was like, can I look at that? What's in that? Because I was getting involved on TikTok at that point to find out more information about what was happening with me. And so that's when I was like, what is this that you're giving to me? Can you make sure that's not in it next time? But by that time, I didn't need it anymore because Zepbound was available and my insurance thankfully covered it. And so I started Zepbound, the first availability that you could. I think it was like December 9th or something. And so I started that, and I had been at basically 7.5 with compound. And so we started back at 2.5 just because I didn't know what the mix, how different that might be. And so that was my only stall. And it's not a stall. It was just because I had to start over. And by the end of the month, by the end of December, I was back up to 7.5 again. And I have never not lost every week. I've never had a stall. I would say that my body is exactly the kind of body that tirzepatide, that Eli Lilly is looking for this type of medication, because it just works. And what I feel so badly for anyone who struggles and it doesn't work for magically like it has for me. So that's where my heart really is for people, because I want them to know what that's like. And so I look forward. That's why I love this show and what you do, and just exposing us to so many things that are coming out, because there is real hope. And there will be answers for everyone eventually. Like semaglutide was not the answer for me. I could not handle it. I was losing weight, but it's because I literally was not eating at all. And this one has just been the greatest physical year of my life. I would say it's been just remarkable and beautiful for me. And so I've consistently lost. And I would say that I was probably in maintenance in early August, but I've continued to lose a little bit more. And now it seems like it's leveled out. And I'm at a point where it fluctuates between 2 pounds, and I'm not even trying, it's nothing. And I'm 2 pounds away from my wedding weight, which is just crazy to me. And so my 1 year Tirzepatversary, I say, is coming up on Monday, the 16th of September. And so I figured I would do another live then with members of the community that are in maintenance. And so I started the maintenance live a month ago. I did one, and it came out of this because there's so much talk about your journey on it, of losing the weight and getting healthier and all sorts of things. But then I thought, well, what happens next? I don't ever want this to go away. I actually feel fearful now a little bit that this could stop working, or what happens with when my insurance stops covering it, and what do I do then? And so I was like, there's got to be some answers. Let me just do a live. I don't do many lives. I haven't really done things like that very often. I'm just pretty active in the community. And so I thought I'd do that. And the response was huge. So many people wanted to be on it, far more than I could have had that night. But I set it up to where I asked Tara, who has been on the show before, and she was in the tirzepatide study, or the Zepbound study. And so I asked her, I asked JT, Jernine, she's the flight attendant. And then I asked Rachel, my little love nest, I think it is. And she's pregnant for the first time at age, I think, 41.
We need to get Rachel on the pen.
She's a dream. And she and JT were there for me in my journey early on for any questions that I had privately, and just really walked me through things. They were so compassionate and helpful. They were wonderful. And so she's about to have her first baby, a little boy. And I mean, it's just amazing. Like, her life has just completely changed, but she can't wait to get back on Zepbound. So
what a beautiful story that
is. It is. I mean, you'll love her. She's wonderful. So I had the 3 of them. I was like, those are my 3 rock stars who I just absolutely adore with all my heart. And I was so honored that they said yes. And they were excited about it. They're like, well, we're so honored you asked me. I was like, well, oh my gosh, this is going to be fantastic. So we did that. And then I had a whole panel of all these people come on. I gave them 5 minutes apiece to talk about questions that I had given them beforehand, certain things to answer, because I didn't want everybody's story. It's just too long to talk, and their journeys are already online. Let's talk about maintenance. So that's basically what was done. And it went so well. People were immediately asking for more, and the comments were just flowing. So I needed to wait a few weeks. I had a hysterectomy 3 weeks ago, and so I wanted to wait. Obviously, I wasn't sure how I was doing, but I'm doing great. And so I wanted to start back up, and I thought my Tirzepatversary would be a perfect time. And I just want to kind of keep these going, because my whole thing is maintenance is going to be a lot longer than the time that we took to lose the weight. And so it's going to be the rest of our lives. So what do we do with that? So I feel like there should be some more answers for the community, because that's going to be the longest part of our journey. And it should be just, I really want it filled with just ease. And so I thought, if I can make a difference in this one area, I'd like to, because I want answers for myself. And so I want to the original people who have been on maintenance for a long time, and then people who are just joining it along with me right now. So it's really been neat just in the last month.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I was camping when you did your first one, so I got to like randomly like jump in and see what was going on and sort of listen. And so, as somebody who's far away from maintenance, I just found the conversation to be so on par with the GLP-1 community in general, just like the next phase. And so it was sort of like an inspiring moment for me, because I just thought, this is sort of like what one of the things where I feel like there's a content gap, really big content gap. You're starting to fill that over on TikTok with your lives, your community lives. There's less of it yet over here on YouTube. And so the sign is driving me bonkers. It's like, all I have to do is like just tap it. There we go. Little power source. We should start incorporating like some fun thing. Like when the sign starts flashing, everybody has to, I don't know, whoever puts flashing in the chat first, like wins a mug or something like that. We'll do that. If it starts flashing again, first person to put flashing in the comments and send me an email to Dave@OnThePen.com, I will send you a little care package. So there's definitely a content gap for this. But it was like, it just felt like so normal. It felt like I didn't have to be in maintenance to go there and get something out of it. But definitely if you were in maintenance, you were going to extrapolate a ton of value. And I was like, I would love it if Korrie would be willing to just come on and share just what she's hearing from the community, because you have your fingers on the pulse of that. I'm still like digging up. Tell me more about amicretin. Tell me more about retatrutide. Like, tell me more about the next gen. Like you identified this earlier about the next generation of drugs that are hopefully going to work better for me. But I just loved it. And so you were willing to do that. And so we're going to start incorporating like a little video every week. We're going to try to do it every week with Korrie, sort of kind of just give it an idea or a flavor of sort of what you're hoping to bring to that video for On the Pen Weekly. Just like who's going to benefit from it, and what kind of things are you trying to extrapolate out of the community?
Yeah, and I truly, I'm honored that you would even think to ask me. So thank you. I very much respect you and your work, and who you are as a person and a Christian and a family man. And so working alongside you, even in this small little way, is an honor to me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And so what I've found is that people in the community who are not in maintenance, they've actually seen this as hope. And because I really didn't think that they'd be watching that much. The ones I thought it would maybe feel I thought maybe it would feel defeating, and I was a little worried about that. I didn't want anyone to feel like this was robbing them of their experience, and that it just felt so far away. That was the opposite of what I would have wanted. And so with this, instead, I found that they see it as a light at the end of the tunnel. And it gives them a lot of hope and encouragement. And so once I heard that, I was like, let's just move forward with this. I can continue to do these lives. I mean, to me, I don't even know. It's very little what I do on TikTok. I make videos. I'm on there all the time with friends now. But I thought, this is one thing that I think I could actually help with, because there's so many people, like the women who have joined me on the panel, who are already doing that and have been doing it for so long, telling people about the journey itself. And I was like, I don't know that I really need to be doing that. And I don't know that I know all of that, the ins and outs, because it really was seamless for me, like how I think the manufacturer wants it to be. So I thought, okay, well, this is not about my journey in maintenance. This is going to be about a whole group of people, and that have already been doing this for a long time, or who've been in it for 6 months, or just in it now. It's not my story, it's everybody else's, and how we can learn together. And because this is going to be the longest part. So I think it's going to be really great long term. And I'm not affiliated with anybody. I don't have anything. I made a little TikTok shop at one point just because they said it would raise my algorithm or something. And I sold 5 things and it was to myself. So, I've not made 1 penny on anybody. And so I'm just like, I'm very
neutral
with this. Yeah, I have nothing. I just really do have a desire to help because I believe in it so deeply. It has changed the course of my life, and it has changed the outcome of my life, my physical life, and how long I'll live on this earth. So I really want people to be able to have this aspect to it too. And so I am, again, very honored that you would ask me, and I'm very thankful about it because I think it will be helpful. I hope I'll do whatever I can to make it helpful.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that. I think one of the things that I loved about that live and was kind of a light bulb moment for me is that it still, it was definitely a maintenance focus, and you had some really great people. Tara's been on here, of course. Janine's been around OTP since she's an OG OTP, and Rachel with Love Nest. Like her story is like one of the most heartwarming GLP-1 stories you'll ever hear. I mean, to go from. And she's such a, like, I've never met her. I've interacted with her through comments, but just seems like a very sweet and sincere soul.
And so all 3 of those women, I absolutely adore. I wouldn't have asked them to be on it if I didn't trust them and really respect them.
Yeah. So we've got to get Rachel on, but the thing about this live is, like you said, it was maintenance focused, but it had an element that everyone on a GLP-1 journey could sort of get something from. And that was like just a really cool thing for me, because that's what I'd like to see moving forward with OnThePen, is just like, how do we make the tent big enough that somebody who's just researching these medications to see if they might be helpful can get as much out of it as somebody who's already at goal, already sort of struggling through that maintenance, which, as you pointed out, is a lifelong commitment. And so there aren't going to be easy answers, but there are going to be things that we can learn from each other. So I think uniquely what you're doing will help bring multiple points of view sort of into one sort of update weekly, so that we can make sure that those members of our community, and there are many here who have been with me since the get-go, who still hang around with me, who don't have any more weight to lose, but they're in maintenance. And so I just wanted to continue to offer them really good advice, and I know that we'll be able to accomplish that together here. And so this will be a weekly thing that just gets included in OnThePen, this show every Thursday night at 9 p.m. I may even upload those as individual videos so that we can have those in a playlist for people who are in maintenance, so that they can just go there and get those all easily if they don't want to watch an hour-long show to get it. So,
and I'm going to work on my background.
I think your background it's nice and clean. Mine's very cluttered. It's getting
awesome. I was like, I got to do something here. So I did want to mention on the Monday night show that we're having the 2 special guests, because I'm not doing a massive panel this time. That was the first time, and we saw how it went and how it is really wanted. But I wanted to obviously spread this out because there's a lot of people. Let's not just get them all at one time.
Right.
So I asked Annie, Lose It with Annie, and she was cool. I listened to so many of her lives in the early days. She's fantastic.
I've seen her stuff too, and she's another one who's in maintenance.
She's a powerhouse and just very firm.
Yeah, firecracker.
Yes, but she always makes sure that it's done safely, and she will call anyone out when it's not. I mean, I really admire her. And so she's on medication. She will always be on medication, is what she says. And then I have Jessica, and she's I think she's not been on medication for maybe 10 months or so, a year. And her story is interesting. I mean, she was obese for I think most of her life. And so now she's doing other things to help taper it and keep it off. And so I thought her perspective would be important, because there are going to be people who are going to be able to afford it for a certain amount of time, and then they're not going to be able to afford the medication anymore. And so her perspective I thought could be very valuable. I don't think that necessarily it will work for everybody, because I do know that it is a disease. And so it might work for somebody, it may not work for somebody else, but I think her point of view could be very valuable, especially because people will not be able to afford this long-term more than likely. So I thought those two perspectives are going to be really helpful. And then we'll still have the other women as well. And so we're just going to go from there. And so I don't know how often we'll do like these lives, with a whole group and everything, maybe once or twice a month. And then just other things that I noticed throughout the community, and lots of maintenance things and questions that I ask and people want to give me information on, and just so we can get the information on TikTok. But also, I know you said on YouTube, there's not much about maintenance over here. And a couple years ago, when I was looking up things with hysterectomies and all sorts of issues that women face in menopause, I didn't go to TikTok. I didn't even have a TikTok. I went to YouTube, and that's where I got all of my information, other than, personal physicians. So I think that would be valuable to have that brought over here as well.
100%, 100%. The TikTok is really good for short form stuff, but YouTube is really where you're going to get, you're willing to go a level deeper and get the nuance and sit and really absorb information. So
I would listen to 45-minute things all the time and just take it all in.
It's a different vibe. Yeah. It's like I'm putting this on while I'm on the treadmill or cleaning or whatever. One of the things that I really love about you combining Annie and Jessica is like, not that they, like, some people might be like, oh yeah, two kind of opposing opinions.
No.
I think it's like, it's more nuanced than that. I think you framed that perfectly. There are a good number of people who just won't be able to afford to stay on the medication for maintenance. And for those people, they deserve to be walked through their journey just as much as somebody who can afford the medication. So I love that perspective. I also love the fact that there are some within the community who just want to try to do it without medicine. And I validate people's desire to want to do that. And so I love that perspective. And I love Annie's perspective, who's somebody who identifies it for herself. She's lived with obesity for many years of her adult life. The medicine helped her to get there. And she knows that the clinical trials show that there was a placebo group and a non-placebo group, and the non-placebo group just did better. And so, I love that you kind of got both two different people taking two different paths, but hopefully can achieve the same thing. And within the power of community can get like the right tips and tricks along the way. And so that is what my hope and dream is for, and I'm sure we will do that here with your contribution to OnThePen. I'm so looking forward to it. Korrie, if people, and there's not a ton of people who are watching this who are probably on TikTok, but let's remind everybody where you are at, like what your handle is on TikTok so that they can be a part of this, and then remind us when your next live is.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it used to be .Korrie when I didn't even know how to make a TikTok handle. I was like, I don't know what the Korrie's taken. Let's do this. But then my account got banned back in May out of nowhere. It was right before the community guidelines came out. And a couple of us that happened to, I have no idea. They would not give me a reason, could not get it back. Everything was gone. So since then I made a different account, and it's Korrie, Korrie .take2, the number 2, like numeral, Korrie take 2, Korrie.take2.
And then that's going to be your TikTok handle at Korrie.take2. Is that Instagram as well? Are you on Instagram?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on Instagram that much with it. I usually use a personal one for Instagram, and then I go to that one randomly to kind of check in and post things that I post on TikTok. But I'm trying to be a little bit better about it. So we'll see.
It's to be a lot to manage.
It does. And, I just had a hysterectomy. We just had our first grandbaby over the summer. So I've been busy. I'm like, I don't worry about that so much. But now I have time. Oh, yes.
I was going to say, there we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, came in focus. Yeah, so that's TikTok. So that's the one you want to make sure that you follow.
With my usual straight hair, I got a TikTok waiver. I was like, this is not what I usually look like. So
this was it looks very nice. This is very last minute and very kind of you to come on I knew, I mean, we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks, but I didn't know if I was going to do a show for tonight. And then as we were texting about the next couple of weeks when we get this stuff rolling, which we do plan to get this rolling within the next couple of weeks, and incorporate this into the show. But yeah, so I appreciate you being flexible to do this on the fly here today. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to this, Korrie. I think this is going to be a really valuable thing for the community as those who are in maintenance approach, those kind of big, like it feels big to hit maintenance. And then, I mean, I just think about all the anxiousness around if I would be at my goal weight. I try to put my feet in the shoes of somebody who's like near their goal weight, who struggles to afford the medication, doesn't have insurance coverage. And it's like the amount of anxiety over potentially losing all the progress that you've made would be a horrifying thought. And so I just want to help those people, especially, know how to navigate maintenance. But for those who are doing it with GLP-1s too, there's 1,000 things to consider. And just like any part of your journey to a healthier weight, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of factors to consider. And so just having those discussions and doing them weekly, I think is going to be a really great thing. So I'm looking forward to that. Anything else you want to add today?
No, other than like you said, with insurance, with things, another aspect to this is that it's not seen like with diabetes, you'll need to be on this for life, even though we know that we need to because we have insulin issues and everything. Insurance generally will cover it for you while you're losing weight and give you a PA and whatever, and it might be able to be extended. So that is one of my massive goals. Not me personally making this happen, but to be any sort of contributing factor, is that with insurance companies, these are seen as lifelong medications to ward off our diseases, and so that they are covered for the management of our disease, and so that we can continue to stay on these. And that's what I fear, is that people will just be cut off and then they don't know where to go, and then what can they afford and whatnot, all these things with it. So that's part of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Very good. Well, thanks for joining me today. And I really am looking forward to drop in the comments of the video if you're watching and you're excited. Put maintenance in the comment if you are excited for that. Korrie, thanks for being here today. And I can't wait to do this in the coming weeks.
Same. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Korrie, take two. Make sure you give her a follow over on Instagram and TikTok. You want to definitely make sure that you get plugged into those maintenance lives over there if you're on TikTok. But you're going to you're going to get updates here from OnThePen moving forward on what the community is saying about maintenance from a friend of the program, Korrie. This was just a really great conversation. Now, I do want to highlight just a couple of things. As you may know, Ro is a sponsor of OnThePen. So when we talk about accessibility to these drugs, which we talked about, we need to report the shortage. Why is reporting the shortage important? Well, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk are telling their story to the FDA about the supply and the availability of these medications. But oftentimes our story on the ground is much different. If you go to ro.co/supply tracker, you can report whether you're finding that medication at your pharmacy or not. And then Ro is going to automatically generate their own report to the FDA on what the actual boots on the ground people are experiencing with shortages. So we're telling our story with the supply tracker tool. Of course, you're going to get email alerts when medication becomes available in your area too. So another reason to check out the Ro supply tracker tool. If you're just getting started, right? If you're just getting started, the Ro checker tool, ro.co/checker is going to be where you can go and you can actually see if you have coverage. You're just going to pump in your information on your insurance card, and they're going to get back to you with an email that says, here's what you're covered for, here's what it costs. And then, of course, if you're looking for access to care, look no further than the Ro Body program. I am using it. It is a seamless, frictionless way to get access to a doctor who can help you get coupled with the medications that are going to help you live the best version of you so that you can accomplish the things you want to accomplish in life. Health is a means to an end. And that's going to be different for everybody. But there are medications that can help you deal with chronic disease. I'm actually getting help with things like regrowing my hair because I would like to not look like a bald old man. at 40 years old. So I love Row. It's a great program. Check out the Row Body program at row.co/OTP. Of course, if you're ever going to try any new medication, consult with your doctor and ask about the side effects. Their side effects are all listed at row.co, just a couple clicks away from finding all of the information you need to find about these medications. Thank you to Row for partnering with OnThePen. And thank you for being here on this special edition of OnThePen. This was a great show. Really looking forward to having you all here next week. We have got a wonderful slate of guests coming up. We've got Mimi from the Retatrutide trial. We've got Amy in Half. Now, if you don't know Amy in Half, she is a creator on Instagram, on TikTok, who's been, I believe she's been on Oprah programs multiple times now. She has got such great perspective. She's somebody who's also in maintenance who has, I mean, she is like the queen of maintenance, and she has really started to develop a real strong voice of advocacy for the haters out there, because her content seems to be somewhat of a magnet for people who really need some education on what these medications do for people. So Amy in Half will be on, I believe, the 26th around then. And we are engaging some of the doctors that have been on the program before to come on and share again. I know that some of you have your favorites, and we look forward. Dr. Daniel Rosen has reached back out, so hopefully we'll have him on in the next few weeks. Just some really great potential guests coming up, and I'm looking forward to it. Until next week, this is the time where we say goodbye, but make sure before we do, you hit that like button, because that's what's going to help other people to see this as this gets out into the community. But until next week, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you in the coming week. I can't wait to do this all again next week with you live. And until next week, have a great week.